This information you are about to hear and perhaps view, these are not necessarily the thoughts or the ideas of Gary C.Clement or the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast. We are in no way, shape, or form affiliated with the parties this story is about or was interviewed for. Parts of this content may not be owned by or the property of the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast, G2 Network Media, or any other company we are affiliated with, and this information is strictly the opinion of those being interviewed. This content is for information purposes only, and although we may make reference to various news stories, we share our own independent beliefs about the content and provide our own opinions. Please enjoy the information. Haard News, hosted by Gary C.Clement. Today's news is made up of so many different issues, and it's hard to keep up. But we all know it's important to keep law enforcement in the community and society, as many in America have a problem doing the right thing. Growing up, my mother always said it's easy to do right, but so many people choose wrong, and once you get in trouble, it's very hard to get out of it. Haard News will tackle all issues that break the barriers of justice for all, freedom for all, and simply a good and strong meaning of democracy for all. The show covers politics, crime, gun violence in our communities, and will introduce guests who have a personal stake in these issues. So without further ado, please enjoy this week of Haard News, hosted by Gary C. Clement. Hello, my name is Gary C. Clement, and welcome to Haard News. Our guest today for this episode is Reverend Dr. Michelle Laws, the Associate Minister of the Union Baptist Church of Durham, North Carolina. The topics of discussion are, number 1, Black women in power when education makes the difference. Number 2, COVID-19 and the Black church. And number 3, the importance of mental health education in the Black community. Dr. Michelle Laws is an ordained minister and associate minister, not to mention she holds a doctorate degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, a master's degree from North Carolina Central University, and a PhD from Virginia Commonwealth University of Medicine in Virginia. Also on the call is my co-host, Mr. Ron Dove. Okay, so first of all, Dr. Laws, please just tell us a little bit about your life and your education, please.
Oh, wonderful. Well, so I grew up in the South. I am what they call a grit girl raised in the South. Born and raised in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Some people may know about that through the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, the Tar Heels, or Michael Jordan, who played, whose career got started at UNC in terms of his entrance into the pro league. So Chapel Hill native, born and raised, went all the way from elementary with the exception of 3 years when I lived in Newark, New Jersey with my mom for 3 years out of my early childhood experience, and I went to Bergen Street Elementary. But beyond those 3 years, went all the way through undergrad at UNC Chapel Hill, and as you mentioned, got my bachelor's in mass comms from there, and then left and went to D.C., did some work in D.C., including working for a congressman as his press secretary, and also for a federal organization. And so worked there and then came back, and my godmother, who was the first Black woman to serve in the North Carolina Senate, State Senate, Jenny Lucas, encouraged me to go to her alma mater, insisted that I go to her alma mater, which is North Carolina Central University. So I went there to get my master's in sociology. I taught undergraduate sociology courses at North Carolina Central as well as North Carolina State University. I initially started down a PhD track at North Carolina State in sociology, thought that's what I wanted to do, and then some things happened, got sort of derailed from that path. You know, my grandmother passed away, Senator Lucas passed, all very influential people and important people in my life. So didn't decide to go back to pursue a PhD until much later, actually in 2011. And by that time, I had shifted my focus from sociology only to really wanting to do something around health disparities after seeing a lot of people get sick in our community, in the Black community, and wanted to contribute to better understanding, and particularly cardiovascular disease in Black women. and how we manage that. So applied and got accepted into an amazing program at VCU School of Medicine in their social and behavioral sciences. Got a degree in social and behavioral sciences, which is now through their health policy and behavior department. Phenomenal experience and do quite a bit around mental health. Served as the assistant director for the state division of mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance abuse services. Because my hypotheses around a lot of my work that I've done, research, has really focused on the way stress, psychosocial stress, and mental health impacts physical health conditions. And so that's my education and background. Served also as the executive director while I was working on my PhD, my dissertation. Got a call from a mentor in the civil rights movement and said, hey, we need an executive director for the state NAACP to work side by side with Reverend Barber. We vetted a few people and your name keeps coming up. Would you be interested? And I was like, you guys are kidding me. I am dissertating. I'm working on my dissertation. And I intentionally took this time off to finish this because I didn't want to be one of those who got that far and didn't finish. Mm-hmm. And so, they encouraged me to do that. So also ran for Congress, just did quite a few things in my career to really make a difference in our community, or to try and make a difference.
I see. Okay, wonderful. Okay, cool. So, as far as being a Black woman in power, again, like I said, the education thing has played a major role in your life. When you look back, or just I guess you could say, look at, the Afro-American woman now in today's world, there are some that are, reaching incredible heights. There are some that are, like you said, in the middle and still trying to get there. What's your advice to a Black woman now just trying to climb that ladder?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, because you didn't even know, but I'm working on actually a book for early career African-American females, Black females that, I'm sure the young men will benefit from it. And what I'm doing is taking some lessons that I've learned as, a professional who also is a social justice activist. And some of the lessons I learned moving from the outside to the inside, and, being, which is a title that I'm toying with right now, an outsider insider. And so some of the lessons, the very first thing is to decide how much you are willing to sacrifice to pursue your life's passion and work. Sometimes we get derailed because we don't want to make those sacrifices. And if you're doing soul work, service to the community, if you are one that that's out here, for example, working as an executive director for the NAACP was wonderful. It just, it didn't pay what a lot of my peers were making with the credentials that I had. And so I didn't have what a lot of people talk about now, imposter syndrome. I had this sense of failure, right? Even though I had accomplished so much, and even though I was making six figures, it was still like not where, and actually at that time, it wasn't even six figures with the NAACP. It was, well, how much are you willing to sacrifice in service to others? So you really need to do that assessment. And I decided that my passion and pursuits of my service to the community and weaving that or wedding that with my educational background, I was willing to make the sacrifice. So I calmed myself down and I said, this work doesn't pay well in terms of money in the bank, but it pays in dividends in terms of, creating solutions to societal problems that are creating havoc in our community. So economic disparity, voting rights, education. So I was rewarded by those outcomes versus a large paycheck. So the first thing is make a decision about when and what you want to sacrifice in your career or what is important, what is most important, and be very clear. Because we can be schizophrenic in our, we can be uncertain and just our minds and our work that we do can be very fractured, and we don't succeed in anything because we're so fractured trying to chase everything. So be clear about what it is that, one, your passion is, and pursue that, and be willing to understand that it may take sacrifice early on, and what are the intrinsic rewards and the tangible rewards that you are looking to accomplish? Because I don't believe anybody should just work and not be rewarded in some way. Right. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is sharpen your skills and your talent. Be the best in whatever you are already naturally the best in. Continue to learn. I mean, you will see, so I got my BA. Then I worked several years, almost 10 and then I went back to school and got a master's and then worked for 5 and then decided to go, 8 and then decided to go. I mean, so I'm a lifelong learner. I've got tons and tons of, people come and and they say if I'm on Zoom meeting, they say, I love your background. It's almost like you're in a museum or a library or something. I mean, I'm a lifelong learner, and I think people should be that also, and especially in pursuit of excellence in your own space or whatever it is that you. And then the last thing is, my closest mentors, my most formative and impactful mentors passed away. And I didn't go about the business later of trying to have other mentors fill that space, but people started navigating towards me and doing that, filling that role. And I see now how valuable that is. So always make sure you've got somebody in your circle that's smarter than you, that is more successful than you, and that is willing to tell you the truth. I have one particular girlfriend. She was my maid of honor, super brilliant, very successful, has her own, actually started her own company after I had started mine back in the day. And then I let mine go, and she continued, and I ain't gonna put her business out there, but she's doing extremely well, seven-figure kind of well, right? And so, she is someone that will say, hey, she calls me Miss, she'll say, Miss, I'm not feeling that. I think you really need to rethink that or reassess that. Or if I share with her an experience I've had in the workspace, and I've had to navigate, be that black face in white spaces a lot of times. I have integrated leadership tables a lot. And that comes with battle scars as Black women. And she will be there, and she will say, you are wonderful, you are brilliant, you are beautiful. They don't understand, they don't recognize, let's do something else, or she affirms me. So find someone that affirms you, but also that will hold you accountable when you aren't showing up as your best self as a leader, because we need to do that in these spaces. We always need to show. Need to give ourselves grace, but we also need to make sure that we are showing up as our best selves, because people are depending. If you have become identified as a leader, and I never identified myself, it was people saying, we want Dr. Laws, or we want Michelle Laws, or me speaking, and people saying, wow, so my talent and all was always affirmed by community and then others. And so early on, I knew where those were. So those are some, hopefully it didn't get too convoluted, but those are some, I think, core messages or lessons that I would tell the early career Black young girls,
Sure.
women,
Okay, cool.
ladies.
Okay. You spoke, like I said, again, you were part of the NAACP. The times have
Hmm.
changed. The challenges of today to rebuild the organization, are greater than ever, I'm pretty sure, to the power structure it used to be
Hmm.
from years ago. How do
Hmm.
we, like I said again, how do we rebuild back again, I guess, the power that the NAACP used to have, what they used to mean? How do we rebuild that
Hmm.
today?
Well, so what I think is needed is an honest assessment internally, the organizational leadership now, and that includes the board of directors at the national level, leadership at the national level, need to be willing to do what I challenge corporations when I talk about, and organizations when I do diversity, equity, and inclusion training or workshops or presentations. Is you got to be willing to sit in the truth and acknowledge that you acknowledging the truth has to be about the greater good and the legacy and the sustainability of the organization, and it has nothing to do with you. And until we can have that happen, we can't rebuild. We can't rebuild. We can create something new or something different or a spin-off, and that takes time. It won't have the legacy over 100 plus years that the NAACP has. So I blame the weakness of it, the inability to gain traction like it should during such controversial and challenging political and socio-political times and climates on existing leadership. And they know I do. I mean, I have been disinvited to things, to tables, to conversations, because I say, look, until you're willing to say we're part of the problem because our egos have gotten in the way, you're not going to be successful. People follow folk when they know that they are authentic and they know that they are not in it just for themselves, but they're truly in it for the mission of the organization. And that's what has to happen. You've got people on there, like in Congress. You've got people on the national board of the NAACP who've been on there for, I won't say, I won't exaggerate and say hundreds of years, but they've been on there a long, long time.
Yeah.
Move over.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Move over and let somebody, but because those positions come with such influence and power in their respective areas, from New York all the way down south, further, Mississippi, which is where the current president is from. There, I like these people. This isn't personal. This is my appraisal of the organization. Until you're willing to say, look, I'm going to bow out and let some new blood run and become a board member, but you don't. You got people who've been in there 10, 15, 20, 30 years, it seems. I don't know if somebody's been there 30. I know 20 for sure. Mm-hmm. And so, they built their careers and got in their power base, built their power from being a board member of the national NAACP at the national level. And it trickles down to states as well. You've got people who abuse their power and believe it or not, whether or not we see it in the Black community, when the NAACP shows up, other institutions and organizations do look and listen, and they don't want the NAACP to show up and to call them out on anything. And so we may not recognize the power that they have, but the reason why they have been able to sustain itself, or the organization has been able to sustain itself, is one, because of its legacy, yes, but also because white folks still believe that it is a super powerful organization. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Now, go ahead, Ron. You can say something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just want to make a little comment, and God bless you for being another one of the power brokers for Black women who are out there in the education area and who are now contributing back to community. But one thing I had a discussion with this morning was, and it's a strange kind of dichotomy where you have now that they have eliminated affirmative action, on the other side of that, in some of the black colleges where at one point they were saying that in one college it was at one point in time about maybe 5% white and historically black colleges, and the rest of the 95% black. And that now, and this one particular college has jumped from about 5 to about 14%. Then there was another statistic on a black college where it was around 10 or 15%. Now it's 95%. It's a historical black college, right? Where now whites are taking advantage of the of that historical black college where they get this financial opportunity, and I'm thinking, wow, a historical black college now that is and name a black college, but yet a lot of whites are now coming into that system and benefiting from it at that one point. But on the other end, they want to get rid of affirmative action. So I thought that was really interesting. I was kind of shocked to hear that, and that's going on in quite a few colleges around the nation.
Oh yeah.
So I was wondering, did you had any reflection that you could bring on that?
Yeah. So one of the things, there's several things I want to say about that. First of all, absolutely. We sometimes fail to see the value of our institutions. It takes others to endorse that perspective before we see, right? And so what has happened is, I believe, you've got especially affluent blacks. So I'm going to say, six-figure earners and up, right? Depending on where they live. But people who have high incomes, and let me be very clear, and I am very clear that income and wealth are two different things. But still, there's this mindset of people who, when they become high income earners, that their kids deserve the best, and rightfully so. And they have bought into the notion that white folks' Kool-Aid is colder. And so you have this high socioeconomic brain drain from black communities going into white institutions. And so still in HBCUs, the predominant socioeconomic status is still mid to low income blacks. So that's first thing. But whites understand that the quality of the education and the credentials and the skills and the adeptness of the instructors is right up there with what they've seen in white institutions. And so they will send their kids there because they understand it's the when you've got some professors that have been there for a long time. But then you also have the other side of that too, where black PhDs and intellectuals won't go to HBCUs. They too think. And I had a conversation with Michael Eric Dyson about this, and he said to me, well, the problem is when I first got out with my PhD, I applied to HBCUs and they would not hire me. And he said, so we've got a lot going on there. And then the other thing, so white people who are sending their kids there, as well as Hispanic and Latina, as well as some Asians, so especially Indian Asians, they're sending their kids to HBCUs because they understand the value of an HBCU education, whereas we still question that in our community in general, and so we need to stop that. I've got friends who are like, well, and I'm like, they're so happy to say, my child got into Stanford, or my child is going to Yale, or they are going to Harvard. And these are, like I said, among the black intellectuals or intelligentsia. And, I would roll my eyes and say, oh yeah. So, but then I thought about it. I went to a PWI, UNC Chapel Hill, because my grandmother was so happy and insistent that I go, because no one in our family had ever gone to a PWI, and none of her kids had ever gone to college at that point and finished. My mom went to Rutgers, which is, we ended up in Newark, but she didn't finish. And so my grandmother was head over heels, having worked for white families, being the nannies of white families in Chapel Hill who were professors and doctors at UNC. She was so proud to be able to go and say, my grandbaby got into UNC and is going and is thriving, right? And so I understand what goes into that thinking, but I'm just identifying it as part of this black flight out and white entry in, and then this way. And then the other thing is, don't be fooled now. And I've said this. As gentrification continues to happen, think about the real estate of our HBCUs and where they are, right? Think about where they are located and what is happening in and around where they are located. So quite naturally, folk got their eyes on them because of the real estate too. And what that would mean if they can get their hands on some of the real estate that is around where our HBCUs are, if not our HBCUs. I will become very nervous when I start seeing white presidents of our HBCUs. And that's when I will know that things are about to change. And some people are, my sister-in-law and brother. My sister-in-law is from Durham, and she married my husband's brother, who is they're from Chapel Hill, right? And my mother-in-law is an educator, retired educator, known all throughout, but she taught in the Chatham County schools. But at any rate, so Elaine and them are from Durham, and they are like old hillside graduates, Durham diehards, NCCU diehard, and I had this conversation that I say, people are saying that there's a move afoot for North Carolina Central to become UNC Durham campus. And so they're saying, that's not going to happen. Our trustees are not going to let that happen. I said, well, be careful when you start seeing white folk become placed in leadership positions, because that's often, and North Carolina Central is a public university under the UNC school system, and people don't know that. And so sometimes we make it easy for them. And now on the affirmative action piece, just quickly, we know who really benefited from affirmative action.
Right.
And in many instances, it was white women. And in many instances, we lost that. Affirmative action wasn't the great regulator of injustice and inequality and discrimination in higher ed that we thought it was going to be. It just wasn't. Now, did it open doors for people? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But people still dealt with institutional racism and structural inequities within these institutions that the doors open. So when you look at the success rate, for example, of black males at UNC, it is dismal.
Right.
And that was under affirmative action. When affirmative action was, when you looked at the number of black students who made it through med schools, before the Supreme Court struck it down. So let's not act as if affirmative action was the great equalizer that we thought it was going to be, because it actually was not.
Okay. All right. Now I've got something here. A couple of weeks ago, we've been hearing all this bad stuff about Justice Clarence Thomas, and he basically denounced the power and what affirmative action actually did for him when he was younger and going to school. He basically said that, he shot it down. He wanted it to, he wanted the Supreme Court case or whatnot to actually be overturned. And I thought that is crazy because I know good and well he benefited from affirmative action.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But are we really surprised at anything that is coming out of his mouth right now or even before this? Yeah. So Clarence Thomas deals with, I think, now I'm not a professional psychiatrist or psychologist. I am a behavioral scientist, however. I think Clarence Thomas has a very, let me see, how can I say this? I think for him, he has an identity disorder.
Okay.
That is based on personal trauma, and that he will not recognize. And so I wouldn't give very much credence to his personality and identity disorder, because he is very he projects his anger of the Black community in his eyes not loving on him because he was dark, big lips, big nose, in his opinion, perceived as unattractive, ugly, undesirable. And the ones who desired him were white folk who opened the door for him to have. So that's where he sees his identity tied to is white appraisal and disdain for his blackness. So I don't give much credence to anything that I don't give much weight to his appraisal or interpretation or evaluation of anything that has to do with race and racism in America. Because unfortunately, he's dealing with a psychological disorder. And I mean that not in a funny way. I really mean that in a serious way as a med school graduate behavioral scientist.
I see.
Well,
Okay.
I would like to throw this in since you said this disorder. I'm in the process of reading a book. We're doing a book club thing on post-traumatic slave syndrome with Joy DeGruy. And my son really encouraged me to do this. And he was talking about the epigenetics, I think you call it, where it's passed down, certain traits are passed down from the fathers to the sons down to the generations or whatever. And as a doctor, behavioral scientist, I would ask you, do you think that there's a certain point where this syndrome wears down to the point where we gradually regain our senses and come back to being the people that we should be? Are we heading in a direction where we're going through all of these changes, birth changes, to return to the great people that we say we once were? What do you think?
So first of all, I love Dr. Joy DeGruy. I love her work, and I've used it a lot in presentations. So post-traumatic slave disorder or syndrome is very, I do think it's very real. Some people used to call it, internalization of the effects of slavery or whatever, us internalizing the trauma and creating our sense of self-worth around what the slave owners taught us, either through their brutality or through their quote-unquote attempts to teach us. And so, so one, I support her work, and I do recommend. That's exciting to hear that you're doing a book club. I think she is her and Dr. Frances Cress Wesling, who I also, before she died some years ago, I had an opportunity to attend a Congressional Black Caucus Brain Trust, and Dr. Frances Cress Wesling along with a lady by the name of Dr. Avery Moon Parker, were the panelists. And Dr. Avery Moon Parker coined a phrase called DOTS. She said that Black people don't suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. And she hadn't introduced, or Dr. Joy's work hadn't come into that conversation, but post-traumatic stress disorder, she said we suffer from DOTS, daily ongoing traumatic stress disorder. And in my presentations, I say, my grandmother would say it this way with very limited education. If it ain't one thing, it's another. And that's what our ancestors, our grandparents and so forth used to say, well, I'll be darned if it ain't one thing, it's another. And that's that daily ongoing traumatic stress that Blacks have been subjected to. So, but going back to, so I think those three women have been the most brilliant thinkers around the impact of slavery and the impact of trauma as a result of our enslaved experience in America. So I think that I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing, because I am seeing more movement afoot of us saying, declaring who we are unapologetically. And even in spaces that you would normally see, even in the workspaces now, people are walking away from quote unquote good paying jobs because they're like, oh, heck to the no. And so, and some families are teaching their children at home. You've got that move down in Florida, that Faith in Florida organization. I encourage people to check them out. Go to their website, faithinflorida.org. Very simple, faithinflorida.org. But they made national news when Linda Wiggins Chavis came on and said, oh, okay, Governor DeSantis, you don't want to teach our history? Faith communities, suit up. We'll teach our own kids. Mm-hmm. We'll teach our own kids. And if you want your kids to learn, send them to our churches and they will learn. Okay, we ain't begging. We're not asking y'all to do we're not begging for y'all to do this. Mm-hmm. You don't want to teach. Churches, suit up and stand up to what you are supposed to be about. And so I am encouraged. So the answer to that is, yeah, I'm encouraged. I think we are shaking the shackles off of our minds and off of our psyche and spirits that is a result of post-traumatic slave disorder and syndrome. I think we are. I'm seeing pockets of it. Illinois, the whole reparations thing, now some people are like, well, why they take it? That ain't real. Look, that's a start. And while we're still negotiating, paying reparations in the housing is a start. So let's not knock them. So I mean, there are, the George Floyd case, I think made people did something to disrupt our, sleep. Mm-hmm. It disrupted our sleep. So when people say stay woke, I'm like, I still use that. But I use it in the declarative. That the people I hang with, I'm one of those who was taught, dad and mom and all of them, even though they weren't together, but my mom in her own way, my dad in his way as a veteran before he died, and my godmother and all of them, I stay woke. Right. So I do it in the declarative. I don't do it in a way to encourage. I say we stay woke. And a lot of people have stayed woke in spite of what has happened to us, in spite of the move on Philadelphia being blasted killed, just in spite of what they did to disrupt or to try and disrupt and weaken the Black Panthers, in spite of what has happened with the NAACP, we still are people who know not to sleep too long. And I'm so glad that, because we know that anything could happen. And so you had on plantations, you had people, Harriet Tubman we know about because she was so successful and she was documented. But I believe that there were other Harriet Tubmans that we never talked about because we didn't know about them in the way. A Harriet Tubman now to me is a symbol of the spirit of Black freedom fighters and liberators. It's a symbol. There were others, right? And so Nat Turner and all that, there were others that we just don't know. And I was taught that by Dr. Sonia Haynes Stone, who died while I was a student at UNC, and we started protesting to create a freestanding Black cultural center. And it was built. And now it's called the Multicultural Center, which I pushed back on but I remember when she died of an aneurysm. And Spike Lee and everybody came, we were protesting and stuff, and Michael Jordan and all of them. And Michael Jordan said, okay, what's the problem? Is the problem money? I will pay to break ground on this building. And so, but then they said, oh no, it's not that. We don't have the space for it. But before it was, we don't have the money in the budget. And then we got word from Dolores Jordan. And she said, I come here with a blank check that my son is ready to sign. And the next thing we know, they were saying, oh, it's not the money, it's the location.
Mm-hmm.
Khalid Muhammad came before he died, obviously, but he came and he challenged the Black boys on campus. He said, I walked across this white slave plantation, and I need to tell you Black boys, leave them Heathers the hell alone and hook up with your sisters. And so, that's what I come out of. And then when I was ordained in the Baptist church, one of the churches that actually before I became even a member, I spoke at the church that I'm a member of now, which was one of the largest churches. And I challenged in Durham, over 6,000 members. And many of them are Duke Black professors and, members of the athletic department and this, that, and the other. Y'all are still working on slave plantations. Mm-hmm. Those are plantations. Yeah. They're just the modern day plantations, right? So we got people who've shaken the shackles off of their brains and their minds and their spirits and their psyche. Mm-hmm. And they're doing this work. And I'm encouraged because our young people are doing this work. And even though there's a lot of cultural appropriation by whites, you got a lot of young white people that are doing this work. That they're like, look, I ain't trying to listen to what my granddad and my mom and all of them are talking about.
Mm-hmm. Right. I got you. Okay. Now, you are talking about the Black church. In your opinion, COVID-19, what did COVID-19 do good for the Black community, and and where did it hurt us as a people, I guess?
Well, so it hurt us because we had the highest death rate mm-hmm. in North Carolina. And I think if we look at it from a global perspective, Black skinned folk across the globe, but Blacks, I would say Blacks definitely in North Carolina and possibly nationally, we had the highest death rate, right? Mm-hmm. And if you don't factor in the indigenous or American Indian populations, right? So what we saw in North Carolina was when our governor declared a state of emergency in March of 2020, things began to shut down. And eventually it was after George Floyd, the churches were completely shut down. Mm-hmm. And they started going online because the death rate was so high. Hispanics were getting it at a faster rate in North Carolina, but Blacks were dying at a faster rate. Now, I'm still trying to figure that out. But Blacks were dying, and part of it is because they say, we had this compounding effect of a pre-existing health conditions. We also have the highest rates of hypertension, diabetes, renal failure, And so COVID overlaid on top of that, and on top of us having weakened immune systems because of all the other upper respiratory and pulmonary diseases that we also, COPD and all of that, lung cancer among Black men and so forth and so on, right? So we were dying at a higher rate. So one of the things that it did when the churches closed down is it forced the community to recognize the strength, I think, of the churches in certain populations' lives. And who were they? Subpopulations. They were our elders. Mm-hmm. And it was the elders that were dying at a higher rate starting out. It's our elders. When you think about it, what is their social network at that age, when they reach, 80s and 90s and, right? The church. And so when the church closed down, they didn't have a social network. And they didn't know anything about Zoom, and they didn't even half of our black folk, especially living in rural areas, they weren't using computers at the level that, they may have been using their phones. So so it showed us the value still of the black church in spite of the criticism and a lot of warranted criticism that it gets. And it also showed us that no one's here to save us but us, as Dr. Lavonia Allison would say, because the state was slow to the draw in terms of, and they were at a loss. And that's why, so I served on our DHHS Secretary's COVID response leadership team and stood up for our state along with Dr. Shannon Dowler and then later Ben Money, our COVID response for the historically marginalized populations in North Carolina. And one of the things we saw was they didn't know what to do. And then we also saw glaring inequities that became more illuminated in our systems. So, for example, public health systems. Everybody thought that, for the most part, the public health systems were serving the people well. Well, we saw a lot of the public health systems were not serving the people well. And we saw in rural areas that there was just this, woefully negligent system in place to meet the urgent needs of a public health crisis that wasn't met. And then on the other side, we saw mental health crises, too, that I have been talking about for a long time. That house was on fire, too, even though all of our water hoses at the time were directed towards the public health crisis. We were also experiencing a mental health crisis. So those are just some things that, and now I hope we build the momentum in demanding what we need, being clear about what we need, and appraising systems before we get to a crisis. We need people that are constantly, I say constantly being secret shoppers of our public health delivery system. Call and try and get somebody housing. And if it doesn't work out for you, 9 times out of 10, it ain't working out for a whole lot of other folk. Then you bring to the table the directors of your housing, the directors of your public health, the governor, and say, look. People are in a mess right now because you got folk on the inside who halfway doing their jobs or are not doing their jobs or whatever. You don't have resources in the right place. Don't wait until it becomes another pandemic, or don't wait until it becomes another public health crisis. And that's what, unfortunately, I see us doing too much, but it showed us where the cracks were. I say the fissures, like an earthquake. It shows us where the fissures are, where the cracks are in our system. So now it's up to us, and shame on us if we don't, respond accordingly.
Right. Okay. So basically, I guess, like you said, you're saying then that, when it comes to our community, of course, we got to learn not just to work together, but we have to, like you said, I guess you could say, come together in a sense where we can really, like you said, take this information back to the people that make the decisions and then force their hand to do something about the bad things and stuff that are happening in our communities. Because like you said, again, there's a lot of things falling through the cracks. A lot of people are getting neglected. A lot of things are just not working.
Right. A lot of things are not working, but we are terrible about holding folk accountable. And that's why you get the same politicians coming to the community, black and white and other, right? I'm not going to call names, but you got some folk in D.C. who've been Congress people, black, for 20, 30, 40 years, and then you go to their districts, you're like, who district did you say this was again? You see situations that might remind you of, post Jim Crow eras, right? That we just got to, so it's sad. It's sad. And I ain't calling names. I'm not going to call out any names, but you see their people living well. You see their family members doing well, but you don't see collectively in their district Black people. So we got to start holding people accountable. And that's one of the reasons why I ran for Congress. When I ran, I knew I was running up a hill with a boulder coming down towards me to try and get out a white male incumbent who's been in there for 30 years. But I said, why y'all keep electing him? Somebody needs to challenge him. Well, no, it's not time. I was like, okay. So in 2018, I ran. And, you know, people, it was amazing. I had a Black lady that I love, older mother. You know, we would call her mother of the church. And she said, David, don't run against David. They've been good to us. And it was the way she said it that just did something to my spirit. And so I said, Miss So-and-so, I said, what? I mean, I'm looking at his record, and I don't see any bills or legislation that he's passed in 30 years that really represents our community.
Right.
So y'all know, can you tell me one? Well, he's showing up at the banquet every time I tell him to buy a banquet. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm serious. And this is the truth. I'm like, are you kidding me? So that's all it takes is for him to buy a few banquet tickets? Oh, my gosh. And it was so sad. That day, I could not campaign the rest of the day. My spirit was broken. It really was. It was like, I was sad. I was so sad. My husband was he was like, babe, you got to get it together because you got, and I'm like, I can't, I mean, I need to lay down because this is like so deep. This is so deep. It just it just broke me in a way that was like, wow, we got a lot of work to do. Because that's all they got to do? Is that all they got to do? Is buy banquet tickets?
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, this morning, I was actually watching the news, watching CNN, and they were talking about Mitt Romney. He says that he will not run for re-election for the next 6 or 8 years because he feels as if, number one, he feels as if he's too old, and then number two, he wants to spend more time and stuff with his family. So he wants somebody younger to basically be able to get into his seat and basically be able to run and, and learn and create a different dynamic or whatnot for politics going forward. What's your idea about that?
No, I agree. I think there should be term limits on all of that, from the Supreme Court on into the White House. I think you should only be able to do 2 terms, which you can now, just 2 terms as the president. And I think there should be maybe 3 terms on the Supreme Court, 7-year terms. That's 21 years you get to serve, right? That's 21 years you will get to serve. And then I think there should be the same term limits in the Senate, which would be, again, 21. And then in the House, move that up to maybe 4 years versus, and 3 or 4 terms there. And that's it. That's it. You should not get to be in there until you die. And that's basically what happens unless you do something really egregious and illegal, unless you're Trump, but unless you do something really horrible, because what happens is incumbents are the ones that people put money behind because they are incumbents. And so they build up the war chest and make it harder for people to get them out of office. And so I don't think you should be in there. We shouldn't leave it to them, one, because their egos are too, we see already how the egos are. Once they get in there, the taste of that power, and their kids. Look at what happened. Was it a Feinstein? The lady almost dead, and it was her family who was saying, no, she can still. And I'm like, look, this lady y'all telling us have not been to not one of her committee meetings all year, and you're saying she's still capable and competent. But that's what we do. Our system, we've created a system that allows people who are power hungry and who are so sick with the power to stay in there because money follows power.
Right.
And once they accumulate it, money's going to follow the power. And that's why that Donald Trump is able to raise the kind of money he got, because people perceive him as having a certain amount of power and speaking the way they want to speak. And so no matter how deviant he is, he's going to continue to be able to raise money. People are still blown away about the kind of money he can raise. I'm not. Are y'all? I'm not.
No. I hear you. Right. But the 14th Amendment basically says that if he's involved in insurrection of any kind, he should be, what's the word for it? They should basically take him off of the ballot. So, but I don't know
But
if that's
guess
going to
what?
happen.
But guess what? What has been the game that they've been playing? Define resurrection now, right? That wasn't a resurrection. That was tourists visiting the White House and the Capitol. That wasn't a resurrection. So now they created the law, so they get to interpret what they actually mean so now they're changing the definition of what a resurrection is so that it doesn't apply to him. So it's their law. It's they wrote it and they're interpreting it and to be what they think. So I don't have much faith in that either.
Yeah, I hear you.
One of the things that I have on my mind about the issue that we have of Black history and the whole subject of our history, and we push the issue of Black history. So I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, because as soon as you say that word, or critical race theory or Black history, as soon as you say those words, all of a sudden everybody, the white world, shuts down and they put a roadblock up. Okay, so why not just say true history, forget the Black part, and go with the true history? I mean, I could say white history, but no, true history, because true history is going to reveal all of that took place in the Black history and all the stuff that took place against people of color. If you tell true history. So how would that go if they said, okay, you don't want Black history? All right, what about us promoting true history in the schools? Then you can tell how Christopher Columbus was a terrible person when how he had people killed or whatever, or how all these different atrocities took place around the world, not under the name of Black history, but under the name of just plain true history. If you told the true history, it's so shocking, the truth, that, I mean, you could just forget about the Black history because there's so much information in true history. What about just skipping that Black and going to another way of putting it and saying, what about us teaching the true history in the schools and not the sugar-coated versions,
right? Not
the versions that make the white man look good, but the true history all over. What do you think of that?
No, so true is right, is fact or reality, right? And so I like that notion of true, but true American history or American history, the complete American history or something like that, because it is American history. Right. And so I like just even saying, complete American history. Or true American history. I don't have a problem with that because it isn't just Black history. And it's not just about us. It's about how they treated us. It's about what they did. And so whites, that's what's made them so anxious about it. And so, upset is because they don't want to face their truth. And so I do like that concept.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, before we get ready to go here, we need to get Dr. Laws to basically give us her contact information for anybody that wants to connect with her, see you on, social media, anything that you wish to share or whatnot with people or whatnot that, like I said, want to just further follow you. If you could give us that information, please.
And that would be great. So on Instagram, it's Michelle Laws. That's Michelle with 2 L's, Laws, Laws 007. Email address, they can reach me at mlawsengagements@gmail.com. So MLAWS and then the word engagements@gmail.com.
We really do appreciate our guest who participated in this episode, and we hope you learned something that will bless your day and your life. For all who are interested in learning more about the Gary Clement Radio Show podcast, please visit www.amazon.com and order my book, The Gary Clement Radio Show, When Strong Afro-American Men and Women Stand Up. It covers everything about us and features a variety of Afro-American personalities who speak out about the importance of education and literacy in the Black community. Well, we thank you for tuning into our podcast. please send us your email address so we can contact you when we have new releases and new episodes and new projects as well. You can reach us at gccpresents@yahoo.com. And also, if you're interested in submitting any materials or want to get in touch with us, please do so by simply sending an email to gccpresents@yahoo.com. That's G as in Gary, C as in Charlie, C as in Charlie, presents@yahoo.com. So until next time, do take care. And this is a G-Tube Network Media production.